All right, today I'm going to dig into this Dana 30. It's out of a 1979 Jeep CJ7. That Jeep's got about 110,000 miles, and we're going to do a refresh on this axle as well as several upgrades. When I first look at my first observation, I don't have any kind of leaking of gear oil anywhere in the center here at the pinion, but over here the bottom of these knuckles are just saturated, both left and right side, so that means my seals are gone. They're here. So those will get replaced during this whole process, but that's about the only noticeable thing that shows any issues may be around. But as far as upgrades, here in the center, I'm going to put in a Spartan helical limited slip differential, as well as upgrade the gears from 354 to 373 with motive gear, ring and pinion gears. Obviously the seals get replaced. I've got the master rebuild kit, which includes all the bearings, seals, and gaskets, that type of stuff for the center. Moving out here, I've got new Moog ball joints, top and bottom for both sides, as well as I'm going to swap out these universal joints. We'll refresh those. And as far as the brakes, I know the brakes were done not many miles ago. The rotors feel really good, so it might be just kind of a cleanup. And we'll have to see as we get those apart as to what, if we want to do anything really to those or not. So let's get you moved over. I'm going to start by disassembling the four-wheel drive hubs. This is a super winch hub that I put on here a while back, and seems to be working fine. It's got some detent where it'll stay in 4x2, and if it rotates a little bit, it kind of locks there. It's got a detent there in 4x4. So this seems to be fine. To get this off, I got to take these pieces out so that you can get, it makes it easier to get the main bolts off here. So let's start by taking that off. Sure. Relatively clean inside. Now I can get access to these a lot better. And then to be able to get this thing off, we got to take this little snap ring off. Okay, I'm gonna get all these cleaned up with brake clean, and we'll get all that stuff re-greased. And the next thing I need to do is now take off this caliper, because this rotor won't come off without the caliper off. So let's get the caliper off. All right, best way is to remove this retaining screw, and then this key will come out, and then the whole caliper should lift off. I believe this is a 6mm Allen. Well, the rotors look good. They're very smooth. I'm not so certain that these were replaced not too long ago, so we'll do some more inspection, but I think just cleaning these up is going to allow us to do that. Now, to get the hub and the rotor assembly off, there's two 2 lock nuts and 2 washers in here. This outer lock nut almost works as a jam nut. The inner nut works as used to preload the bearing. And then the 2 washers are there to make sure they don't spin. In fact, this one's actually got a lock on it. It locks this outer lock nut by being bent over. I'm going to have to flatten that next, and then we'll get these nuts off. Alright, this is the one that gets bent over. It also has what's called tabbed. It's a tabbed washer. This little tab section here goes in a slot in the spindle so that it can't rotate. Here's that inner washer. It's a little bit smaller in diameter, but it's also got the tab. Next is going to be the spindle. It's just slid onto these 6 studs, but it does get kind of corroded in there and not going to want to come out. There's a special tool you can use that threads onto these threads and use a slide hammer to pull it. I don't have that tool. So what I'm going to do is just try and get back behind here with an old sacrificial. I got this old sacrificial chisel that should wedge down in there possibly, and so we can get this thing worked out. Yeah, it's already moving. Okay, you don't want to be hitting on this with a metal hammer. You got 2 different surfaces where the bearings ride. You want to keep those in good shape. And now this shaft should slide out. All right, now this U-joint seems like it's in good shape. I do not remember changing that. And I've already bought replacements, so it's going to get changed again if not, but it does seem like it's in good shape. Alright, next to remove this knuckle, there's 2 large nuts on these ball joints. The bottom one measures out to 1 1/8. I found a socket for that, but the top one measures 1 5/16, and I don't have that. So I've got these soaking in Croil, and while they're doing that, I'm going to go pick up another socket. All right, with a long breaker bar, that nut did not budge. It's only supposed to be 70 to 90 foot-pounds, so it's definitely got something kind of holding it on. I'm going to use some heat to get it off. All right, that's now off. That was absolutely no fun at all. It fought the entire way. It was just very tough to do. Here's the nut. It is a short nut because it's got to make room for the universal joint that's spinning on top of it. And I think because it's short and it's not like a castle nut with a cotter pin, it probably is an interference thread that keeps it from backing out. And again, that just fought me the entire way. So it's still hot actually. But I'm not worried about that because the Moog ball joints is a complete kit. It comes with the lower ball joint and a new nut, the upper ball joint, the split ring seat that goes inside this area, and as well as a new nut and cotter pin. So none of that's going to be reused. So I've screwed this on so it's flush, and I'm actually going to hit it with a metal hammer to try and shock it and get this whole thing to drop. This, by having this also loose, it'll catch it here, but as soon as it drops, I think it'll be all right. But let's see what we're going to do. There, just dropped. All right, the last thing I want to do for the housing here is I'm going to be sandblasting this, and I don't want to damage these threads. So I'm going to take this split ring and I'm going to back it up just to help protect those threads. Remember the new kit comes with a new split ring, but let me get this backed out a little bit. You know, about like that. That'll help protect those threads during sandblasting, and then we'll swap that out. All right, I am going to remove the ball joints before I sandblast this unit, just so I can get back in the nooks and crannies a little better. And both of these ball joints actually need to go out that way, and it's best if you take the bottom one off first. That way you can use this axis hole to get to the top one. I got this ball joint service kit that I find very useful. I don't do ball joints hardly ever, but I use this kit, all these things. I use them in my hydraulic press quite a bit, so it's nice and handy to have all these little fittings and different pieces here. So I found this ring will fit over that, so this will push up through this space, and then we got a cap. This cap, the threaded part will go through that hole there, so like that, and then we put this guy on here. Well, again, we got a hole there for that to still to go through. Okay, there's that one. One thing you notice, there is a small, this one doesn't have it, but the top one's got a groove that a C-clip can go in, And on these, because this is so thick, the C-clip won't go in there. So even though the new Moog's going to come with a C-clip, where it won't go on, so we won't install it, but that's kind of factory. But here's the old bottom. Now let's rig this for the top. Same thing, we're going to put that up there. We'll use this cap. Alright, I'll get this off because I'm going to soak it as well as kind of clean that up. That's the stop, the turning stop. And then this is, I'm going to take this out. I'll take this out with the housing, and it'll get sandblasted, primed, and painted. And then later on we'll install the new ball joints. In thinking ahead, I'm gonna, before I sandblast this, I'm gonna drain the oil, take out the differential, and the seals, and plug the ends. I'm gonna leave the pinion in, and this will allow me to kind of seal this thing. That way I can sandblast it, prime it, and then open this back up and power wash and get any sand going out that direction and get it cleaned up. So I'll let me show you that in fast motion. Alright, in this section I'm going to be welding the axle tubes to the housing. There's several ways you can strengthen these axles. One's with a truss. The truss bridges from the left side axle tube, attaches to the housing, attaches to the right side axle tube. And you know, truss is just not something that's something that I want or actually need. I don't need that kind of strength for the use of my Jeep. The second option would be to actually weld the joint where the axle tubes intersect the housing, that circular joint there. I got a little bit of a problem with that because I've got some people that I've talked to and they say, you know, welding cast is just not a good idea. It makes it brittle, and you really need a special welding wire in your MIG welder to do that. And the smallest spool I could find of that was $110. Just something I just didn't want to approach that as well. So like I did with my AMC 20 rear axle, I'm actually just going to fill in these little plug holes here, and the purpose is, or what I'm really trying to obtain here is I'm going to be welding a plug on the axle tube, which is down inside the bottom of that little hole, and just create a plug so that the things won't rotate. Alright, time to do some sandblasting and get this housing all cleaned up. I used to have a hate-love-hate relationship with this machine because you hate it because you get filthy dirty. Love it for the first 2% of the time because it works right, and then the next 98% of the time you're just babysitting the thing and it's just miserable. But in this case, before I started this, I actually did an upgrade. Now again, this is the 40-pound cheap Harbor Freight pop blaster. It actually belongs to a very good friend of mine. We kind of share its use, and I did make one physical upgrade to this. I actually bought a nozzle, and it's this extended, kind of a lengthy nozzle. It's got a better channel inside that helps redirect the sand so it comes out and doesn't get clogged. The nozzle does come with a ball valve, and I was warned not to use the ball valve because one of the things you don't want to do is turn these things off at the nozzle. All that does is promote sand to get in that black tube there and clog up. The second thing I did differently this time was change my process. To get this thing started, you want open up the air valve all the way, have 100% air coming through that thing and just blowing air, and then you reach down secondly and you crack open that the ball valve that's on the bottom of the tank that starts introducing the sand, and you end up cracking that open. I found that about halfway open was where it liked to live. You crack it about halfway open, sand starts coming out. I was able to completely sandblast until I ran out of sand without having to shake the pot and all kinds of things. So it really, really worked well this time. This whole process took me about 35 minutes. So I was very happy with how it worked, and it really just took off this grime. Got it down to bare metal. When this was done, I did blow the whole thing off, and then I used VHT primer and was able to get a coat of primer on the whole item. Alright, I got 2 coats of VHT primer on. I'm going to go ahead and put 3 coats of this black. Go ahead and get it finished up before we crack it open and do some pressure washing to get the inside all cleaned out. Alright, I put 3 coats of VHT satin black. It's GM satin black is what's on here. It's still a little shiny. If you can see in the background, that's painted with the same, that's the rear end of this Jeep, and it's painted with the same exact paint, and it's dulled down some. So I think this will dull down. This has actually sat outside in the sun for about a day and a half, 2 days. But again, it'll slowly kind of dull down. The next thing I want to do now is I want to go ahead and get this pinion out. And then we'll get the races out as well. the next thing I gotta do is get these pinion bearing races out. This is the rear one, and the front one's on the other side of that baffle. On the other side of that baffle actually is going to be, you're going to have the baffle, you're going to have the pinion depth shims, and then the race. And on this side is just the race. The problem with this race is there's not a relief in the casting anywhere to get a punch or a drift pin on to get this out. So it's going to be very tricky. I don't have a lot of room to do this until I get that. I got to take that one out first. I think I'll just put a punch on it and see if I can get it to punch out the other direction. And then I got a couple choices possibly for this rear one, and that one is I've got a bearing race and seal driver set that might have the right diameter that'll slip inside this diameter but sit on the back side of this. I can punch it out then. If not, I just remembered my slide hammer has got a 3-jaw puller type piece that I might be able to slip in here and get it spread out and get it pulled. So we're going to try one of those, but let's start by getting the front one pushed out. Alright, I think I got lucky. In my bearing race and seal driver set, I was able to find this one here. It's labeled as 59 millimeters, and when I install it this direction, I'll be able to slip it down past this first opening of that forward race and get back to that back. It's not touching the casting, but it's actually on the back side of that the back race, and I think I now can punch that thing out like this. It's moving. Alright, let's go inspect all those parts and check out how they were stacked. Alright, before we get to that stacking order, I do want to announce that we're going to do another keychain giveaway. This will be the 4th keychain giveaway. It's a Project Rowdy keychain, something I've actually made myself as just a thank you to my viewers and those who follow along and enjoy this type of content. In order to be eligible for this keychain, all you gotta do is leave a comment to this video and put in hashtag Project Rowdy. That'll be the keyword that I search for, and the trigger will be when this video gets 1,000 views. So those who see the video early obviously get a little heads up and get a chance to win something back. And I really do appreciate all my followers, my subscribers, and just those that typically follow and make comments and kind of keep me motivated on the project. It truly is a blessing. If you like this type of content, just hitting that like button with YouTube's new analytics, it's extremely important to get a handful of likes so that YouTube then can recommend this to other people who also like this type of content where they are. And whether you're liking my video or you see another video out there that you like what they're doing and you think others need to see that, it is your way of helping that process. So we do appreciate that. So let's get to this stacking order. First thing we did was we took off the nut. Followed that, there was a washer that was kind of pasted down in there. So there is a nut and a washer. You got the yoke. The yoke came off a lot easier than I expected. I used that bearing separator. Thought I was going to need that to get it to pull straight out. It pulled out super easy. Then you've got a seal that's in the casing. Had to beat that out from, I did it from the opposite side, push it out. Behind the seal is a oil slinger. Make sure you don't forget to put that back in. Then we have the bearing. Behind the bearing are these are the preload shims that once you tighten all this down, it'll preload both bearings to the proper preload. So these are important. And then you finally have that rear race. And then I just put this here. This is where the casing would be. So everything else comes from the other side. From the other side, you've got, this is a baffle, and I did booger up this baffle pretty bad. I will, it's part of the thickness, so you can't just leave it out. I will see if I can find another one. If not, I'll get this thing polished up, beat back into shape. Again, it's just a baffle, but the thickness of this outer section here is very important. Then we have our pinion depth shim. And then finally the race. All that stuff goes behind that. And then you have, here's a look at the actual pinion itself. And from the pinion's perspective, it's got a bearing pressed on, and then again another oil slinger. And it's important that we get all that stuff put back in place. So I will get this separated off camera. I'm going to use my hydraulic press, and we'll get in a bearing separator. Not too difficult. Should be pretty easy to do. But anyway, again, that'll let's finish up this part for that. Next, we're going to be installing a Spartan helical locker, as well as we're upgrading the gears, motive gear, going to 3.73, and we'll be doing that in the next part. Hope you decide to follow along, and we'll see you next time.
Jack it up.